This devotion is taken from this book, Jesus, the Middle Eastern Storyteller by Gary M. Burge. Hi, I'm Aiden, and today I'm going to share a devotional from Luke 11 about the friend who comes at midnight. Jesus begins by setting up a scene known to every person who lived in a rural Galilean village. Such villages with as few as 1,000 people were scattered throughout Galilee. Cana, Bethsaida, Magdala, Nazareth, and Capernaum are a few of these mentioned in the New Testament. In his first century life story, the Jewish historian Josephus says there were about 200 such villages in Galilee at this time, though this is a surely exaggerated number. He refers specifically to about 40 villages with names such as Gamla and Yodfat. Jesus begins his story with two scenes, one scene that will never happen and another scene that will. The key is for us to understand the cultural features presumed in each part of the story and apply it to prayer. First, what will not happen? Jesus sets up a paragraph that outlines an unimaginable scenario. Suppose you have a friend and you go to him at midnight and say, "Friend, lend me 3 loaves of bread. A friend of mine on a journey has come to me, and I have nothing to set before him." And suppose the one inside answers, "Don't bother me. The door is already locked, and my children and I are in bed. I can't get up and give you anything." This scene would not be uncommon to village life in the first century. While travel at night was unusual in village culture in Galilee, when an unexpected guest arrived, the first obligation of the host was to present the visitor with food, and food must always be served with newly baked bread. It is not true that the host has nothing to set out. He has something, but it's not enough, not good enough, or not appropriate for guests. Bread is central to every meal and serves as the fork and spoon of eating from common dishes. To serve stale bread or no bread at all would be shameful and unimaginable. No host would even consider it. But at stake here is not simply the honor of the traveler or the honor of the surprise host. At stake is the honor of the entire village. In this world, life is lived corporately, and honor is a value held not simply by the individual, but by the community. Therefore, the problem of hosting a meal at midnight is a village problem, not merely a personal problem. Village members each share the responsibility of upholding their village reputation. Many residents are likely related, with multiple levels of cousins intermarrying. Therefore, family honor and village honor likely overlap significantly. But a solution is at hand. Most poorer villages had communal ovens that were shared and rotated. Every oven, even private ones, were kept outside the home. Therefore, the host knows who has baked that day. He knows where the fresh bread may be located and whom he may ask. Above all, one thing is on his mind. He must call together all resources in order to bring honor to his community and to this guest. Everyone would understand. Everyone would respect his concern. Poor communities must share their resources in order to meet unexpected needs. I have observed this tradition in many countries in the Middle East. Recently, I was traveling through Cairo, Egypt, and decided to visit a little girl my wife and I supported through World Vision, a Christian relief agency. I was taken across the city by a taxi with a World Vision staff member, and when we reached our destination neighborhood, we walked through incredible scenes of poverty. When we came to our apartment block, we ascended stairs till we reached the 5th floor, where we were greeted by a proud father and his family. His little daughter was dressed beautifully and was waiting for us, and we exchanged greetings and small gifts. Then the father appeared from around the corner carrying a case of genuine Coca-Cola in glass bottles. He was proud and smiling, and he offered me one first. I happened to dislike Coke enormously, but my staff escort whispered in my ear in English that I was obliged to drink not one, but perhaps 3, and I did. When we left, I asked about the Coke, and I noticed that as we descended the stairs, families throughout the building were watching us and waving. I learned something that humbled me. The case of Coke was worth so much money that the entire building had put its money together in order to honor me with the best refreshment money could buy. I was the first Westerner to come into the building, and everyone's honor was on the line. In order to honor me properly, 7 families had to share what little they had. Luke 11:5 tells us that this host is a friend to his neighbors. He is an honorable man standing in good relation to the village. Therefore, if he goes to a neighbor to present his dilemma, he knows that the neighbor will respond. The neighbor will share because his is a village that honors visitors. Now Jesus wonders, can anyone imagine the neighbor whispering from his door, "Leave me alone, I am asleep with my children and I cannot help you"? This is shocking and unimaginable. Peasant homes were often one small room with an elevated porch near the back. We have excavated these throughout Israel. The entire family would commonly sleep together on this porch, while their possessions and animals might be found in the front half of the dwelling. Now Jesus' question remains, would sleeping with your children be sufficient excuse to deny such a request? Would a good neighbor refuse to support the reputation of the village and the needs of his friends? Of course not. He would awaken his children and the entire household and use this as an opportunity to demonstrate the importance of hospitality. When I was younger, I remember traveling through southern Jordan with a friend, and we decided to camp overnight in the valleys of the ancient stone city of Petra. We hitchhiked to Ma'an and then caught another ride west to those valleys made famous by an Indiana Jones movie. The night we laid out our sleeping bags in one of Petra's 2,000-year-old caves and found the entire experience, well, frightening. Too dark, too quiet, too wild. But in the distance, we saw the campfires of the nomadic Bedouin. Families with their sheep and goats were settled down throughout the area. We decided they'll like a surprise visit, and surprise them we did. Emerging from the deep darkness of the night, 2 foreigners stumbled to get out rough greetings in Arabic. But it was the next moment I remember so well. Everyone around the fire jumped up. A young baby lying on an Arab rug was immediately moved to some grass. The rug was shaken out, and it was laid out before us as seating. Then a man unsheathed a knife and began carving what must have been a leg of a lamb that was in a kettle hanging over the fire. And there we sat, the baby lying in the bushes while we ate Bedouin lamb on the community's best rug in the middle of the night. A little smiles and laughter and handshakes and the trading of simple gifts. It was Middle East hospitality and honoring, tied to a tradition that was as old as Jesus' story. What will happen? Luke 11:8 now turns the story on its head and brings us to Jesus' insight concerning prayer. I tell you, it's Jesus' verbal tip to his listeners. Here comes the surprise. I tell you, though he will not get up and give him anything because he is his friend, yet because of his anaideia, he will rise and give him whatever he needs. Jesus now reminds his audience what will inspire the neighbor to arise, wake his children, and provide fresh bread to his surprise host. He will not supply bread because of friendship. The neighbor does not lie in bed and tell himself, well, since this is my friend and I like him, I believe I'll give him what he wants. Indeed, they are friends, as stated in Luke 11:5, but this is not the basis of sharing bread. The next phrase carries all the weight of the story. The neighbor will arise because of his anaideia. 2 mysteries must be solved. First, who does his refer to, the neighbor or the host? Traditional interpretations point to the surprise host, but the Greek text is ambiguous. Secondly, what is the meaning of the word anaideia? This is undoubtedly what motivates someone in the story to act. First, notice how the NIV interprets the passage for us. I tell you, though he will not get up and give him the bread because he is his friend, yet because of the man's boldness, he will get up and give him as much as he needs. The NIV inserts the words, the man, to point to the host as the subject of his. The TNIV barely improves this by inserting the word your, because of your shameless audacity, but this is not in the original text either. Furthermore, the NIV translates anaideia as boldness. The host is bold in his request, as the key to gaining needed bread. However, this may not be the best translation. Fortunately, the TNIV supplies a footnote that straightens things out. Many scholars today believe that his does not refer to the host, but to the neighbor in bed. Secondly, added to this is the now widely discussed meaning of the Greek word anaideia, so critical to the story. Traditional translators have said it means shameless or persistent, hence bold, and it is the virtue belonging to surprise host. But this sense of the word comes only much later than the 1st century. In Greek, idea means shame, and the prefix "an" negates it. Thus, an idea means shameless, or better, without shame. In the Middle Eastern cultural context, shame is the very thing you sought to avoid with all your life. Honor, the absence of shame, was the attribute for which you wished to be known. You gathered honor to your family and distributed honor to your community. Therefore, we might easily say that someone in the story is a person in whom there is no shame, someone of honor, someone who recognizes and protects his good name and reputation. Now suddenly, Jesus' story takes on a new meaning. Yet because of his lack of shame, he will rise and give him whatever he needs. The parable is focused entirely on the neighbor in bed. The request for bread is now something that will succeed because of the sleeping neighbor being asked. Let's attempt a paraphrase of Luke 11:8. I tell you, the sleeping neighbor will not get up and give his friend the bread because they are friends. The neighbor will get up and give fresh bread because he is a man of honor, a man who will not bring shame to himself or his village. Suddenly, Jesus' story turns on a new theme. Fresh bread for a surprise visitor will come through the door, not because of the nature of the request or the relationship with the neighbor. This confident request is anchored to the honor of the neighbor in bed. Because he is a person of good character, bread will appear. In Jesus' view, prayer, as requested from God, may be made confidently not because of who we are, but because of who He is. The character of God, rather than our performance, is at the center of Jesus' understanding of prayer. Our assurance does not spring from the quality of request, but from who God is. Because God has honor, He will attend to our needs. And that is the story of the friend who comes at midnight. The story is not about persistence in prayer. It is about God who has honor and therefore will respond to our prayers. That is the kind of loving Father we have. If you read farther on in chapter 11, Jesus describes just how loving our Heavenly Father is.